Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over Generation X. Now, technically, it has been a minute since we last sat down and talked about this one particular team because when it came to post Operation Zero Tolerance, we kind of focused more on the main X-Men team and also Excalibur. Now, with us down technically being done with Excalibur, we now have the ability to kind of focus on other X books like X-Force and also Generation X and Cable as well. Now, just in case you're wondering, hey, Fresh, when are you going to cover stories from X-Man or X Factor? Let's not forget that when it comes to Marvel Comics, they have not released the last few issues of X Factor online for me to cover. So technically, I'm not really able to continue on with the coverage of X Factor. And when it comes to X-Men, there are a few more books online. The problem is that those books take place way down the road when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men. But luckily for us, when it comes to Generation X, we're still able to cover this team post Operation Zero Tolerance after now working our way up to the hunt for Xavier. But with this being post Operation Zero Tolerance, as we get into the opening pages for Generation X issue number 32, we are constantly being reminded that when it came to Monet, we had learned a few things about her character in the last few story arcs because in the entire series so far, she has been this character where we didn't know much about her. She had all of these different secrets, but then story arc after story arc, we begin to learn more about her. Like, for example, her being the sister to Implate. Now, we also learn that for Monet, she's not really just one person. And let me explain. Because at the end of Operation Zero Tolerance, when it came to Monet, she changed into two young girls. So now getting the idea, these two young girls, these twins, they were able to combine together to take form as Monet. And so now we had this huge question who are these two young girls? And also, why are they able to combine together to make another person better known as Monet? Now, when it comes to Banshee, he went over to Muir Island to be with Mormon Taggart. Now, he technically went there for two reasons. First, to kind of get some answers about the twins, but also because for Banshee, he's kind of worried about Mormon Taggart. Now, for me personally, in the 1990s, right, we had a love square. Let me explain. Because in the 80s, it was Banshee and Mormon Taggart. They were not a power couple, but they were a couple in X-Men comics. Now, by the 1990s, though, we had this love square because once Mormon Taggart found out that she possibly has the legacy virus, she began to fall back in love with Charles Xavier. And when it came to Banshee and Emma Frost, when they had decided to work together to open up another school for Charles Xavier, well, it did seem like for a brief moment, those two characters were possibly going to get together as well. But of course, that didn't really happen here, it seems like. But anyways, by this point in the 1990s, Banshee and also Mormon Taggart, they're back together. But it's also Banshee expressing that he's really worried about Mormon Taggart. Because the reason why, because she's always working in finding the cure for the legacy virus. Remember, guys, the legacy virus came from the future by Strife. And technically, at first, it was only targeting mutants, and that was it. But then it evolved, and now it's going after humans as well. Now, technically, we only have one human case, and that would be Mormon Taggart. But it's Banshee saying, listen, you're always in the lab. Why don't you try to get out some and enjoy the fresh air? So now it's him trying to help her get out some more and get away from the lab. Now we do shift over to Emma Frost, right? And when it comes to Emma Frost, okay, so there's some bad blood between her and also Banshee at the moment. And the reason why, because in an earlier story arc, when it came to Emma Frost, she was confronted by Implate. And Implate, all he wanted was penance. And at first, it did seem like Emma Frost was going to hand over penance so that Implate could tell her where she could find the rest of her students. Now, Banshee stopped her, but the problem is, it did seem like at first she was going to go through it. Now, Emma Frost, she did claim that she wasn't technically going to go through it, but at first, it did seem like she was. But then we see that Emma Frost is watching over the twins. Now, while she is doing that, you then have Paige Guthrie appear. Now, for Paige Guthrie, she wants to ask Emma Frost if her and the rest of her class are able to go to a nearby circus, and Emma Frost agrees. Now, this brings in a certain group of characters which I never thought I would sit down and actually talk about, and that would be the Circus of Crime. Now, they date back all the way to the 1940s of Marvel Comics. They first appeared back in Captain America issue number 5. Now, for the Circus of Crime, because they date all the way back to World War II, over the years, we have seen different variations of the team. Now, the modern age team is being led by a character known as Ringmaster. Now, here's a quick rundown of the Circus of Crime. What they usually do is they go to a town. You have Ringmaster use his ability to hypnotize the crowd of people. The rest of his crew go out of their way to steal all the people who have hypnotized their valuable items. Then they leave the town and go over to a different town and pull the same scheme all over again, over and over again as they go to different towns across the country. But lately, they have been trying their best to be, well, better people, no longer criminals. The problem is that they're running out of money. And the thing is, with no money, that means their circus is going to close down soon. And so for Ringmaster, the crew tells him, dude, we gotta go back to our old ways and be, bad people again. And the reason why, because we need the money to keep the doors open. And of course, he agrees. Now, when we do switch back over to the school, we do see Paige Guthrie going out of her way to convince the rest of her class to go to the circus. Now, of course, they don't want to go, but they realize that Homegirl's not going to give up until they agree to go with her. Now, we also kind of realize there's something going on with Sync. Like, he's very sad, depressed, hiding something, but we'll learn why here in a moment. But as the kids are leaving, we do see Emma Frost watching her kids leave, and she's very worried about them. And the reason why, because let's not forget, this is Emma Frost's second group of students. Her first group, they died a while back in our coverage in the early 1990s of X-Men comics, the Hellions. So she's kind of worried about the idea of the possibility of these young kids also dying as well. But once you do have the kids arrive at the circus, you did have the kids begin to walk around the entire place, trying to figure out all the different things they are able to do at the circus. Now, while they're doing that, this kind of leads us into figuring out what's going on when it comes to Sync. Because back in Operation Zero Tolerance, you had our young heroes be completely surrounded by Prime Sentinels. Now, with that happening, it did seem like at first our young heroes were going to die by the hands of the Prime Sentinels. But in that storyline, you had Sync tell Monet that he had wished that he had kissed a girl because he believed that he was going to die. And so you had Monet give Sync a kiss. Now, let's not forget, when it comes to Sync, he's able to copy other people's abilities by syncing with them. Now, at this point in time in Marvel Comics, it was only mutants, other mutants. But either way, when it came to Sync, he feels like he is responsible for what had happened to Monet, the idea of her turning into a young girl, because he feels like his powers somehow played a role in what happened to Monet. But while you have Jubilee and Sync having their conversation, inside you have Skin, Husk, and also Chamber go inside for the main event. Now, of course, that is when you have Ringmaster begin the process of trying to use his abilities to hypnotize the entire crowd of people to begin the process of trying to steal their valuable items. But you did have Husk go out of her way to pull down the scarf of Chamber to use his abilities as a way to throw Ringmaster off. And with him being thrown off, that means he's no longer able to focus on the idea of hypnotizing the entire crowd of people. But you didn't have the crowd of people begin to freak out because they saw Chamber use his abilities. And they're like, oh my God, there's mutants. And they begin to run away. Now, back outside, we also see Jubilee kind of telling Sync another secret that she kind of feels bad because she feels like with everything that happened in Operation Zero Tolerance is her fault. Because remember, in the earlier parts, really the preludes that led into that event, Bastion grabbed Jubilee and kind of used Jubilee to learn some of the secrets about the X-Men and other X families like X-Force and also Generation X as well, but mainly the X-Men. And so for her, she kind of feels like that technically she is responsible for everything that happened to the X family in that event. Now, while the two are talking to one another, they see the crowd of people running outside because, well, now you have our other heroes fighting against the bad guys. And really, the battle is very short lived because once you do have our young heroes being able to defeat Ringmaster and the Circus of Crime, you then have Jubilee being able to make a deal with them. And here's the deal: Ringmaster has to use his ability to hypnotize the crowd of people to make them forget that our young heroes were even there at all. But then after that, every single dollar they make has to go to a nearby charity. It's Jubilee saying, like, listen, I'm going to give you guys a second chance to turn your lives around. Don't screw it up. And for Ringmaster, it does seem like for right now, he is really going to try to lead his crew into a better direction and to becoming better people. And then you have this one particular chapter close with us seeing that Banshee was able to get Mortimer Taggart outside the lab to spend some time with him, but to also enjoy the fresh air by having a picnic. But now we have to jump into generation issue number 33. Now, when it comes to this particular issue, in the opening pages of this one, we do pick up with, well, Generation X right now going out for dinner with Emma Frost because Emma Frost can't cook. And we saw that in an earlier story arc where the kids are kind of like, listen, we'll eat food, but not food that has been made by you. So, of course, you have our young heroes deciding to go out for the evening to get some food. The problem is that right after they leave, there's two people who are now beginning the process of sneaking into the home of Generation X. Now, we do see that once you have our young heroes and also Emma Frost arrive at this diner, there's two people there who kind of want to begin the process of messing with them, kind of being bullies of the city, technically. But while you have that going on, the two young people who were able to sneak inside the school alarm system was not set by Emma Frost. So these two kids were able to easily break into the place and begin the process of looking around. Now, while they're doing that, they don't realize they're being watched by Pennis. But for the young mutants and also Emma Frost, while they're trying to enjoy their dinner, you then have these two guys begin to pick on the entire group. Now, of course, you have our heroes trying their best to ignore them, kind of continue on with their dinner. But the problem is that these guys are not going to leave them alone. Now, you have Jubilee and also Skin being able to use a combination of their abilities to pull a prank on one of the guys. Now, back at the academy, the two young people who have broke into the school, well, they made their way over to the med lab. And their main goal is to, well, break in the med lab to see if there is any kind of drugs being kept inside the place. The problem is that they're then confronted by Pennis. Now, for Pennis, her main goal is to protect the two young girls who, as we know, made Monet in the earlier story arcs, who are now being kept inside the med lab. Now, when we do switch back over to our young heroes at the diner, we do learn the name of the two boys who are constantly bothering them. That would be Weasel and also Dorian, two boys who are always up to no good in their city. Now, while they're continuing to bother our young heroes, they're then confronted by Chief Althea. Now, Chief Althea knows the boys very well, and he is able to easily remove the two boys from the diner. Now, I want to say right here and now that these two young boys, not the young boys, the chief will become very important in later story arcs down the road involving our young heroes. But after being able to remove the boys from the diner, he goes on with his day. But once you do have the entire class and also Emma Frost go back to the school, they realize that they have been robbed. And so you didn't have our young heroes and Emma Frost kind of wonder, what about the twins? Are they okay? And so they go downstairs and they find the twins being well protected by Pennis. Now, Pennis saw the robbers. The problem is that she didn't see their actual faces. What happened was that they were wearing masks of the president and the first lady. And so for our young heroes, they're kind of like, okay, that technically means that she's unable to tell us who had actually robbed us because they were wearing masks of the president and the first lady. Now, for Generation X, they have one particular bad guy, their main bad guy of their entire book, their entire series, and that would be Implate. And so for Implate, we currently see him right now with DOA. And you have the two talking about the idea that a door had just randomly appeared in their base, and they're kind of wondering where in the world that door could possibly go to. Before we're able to learn like where that door possibly go to, we then switch back over to our young heroes the following day trying to figure out like who had technically robbed them. Now, while they're trying to walk around the city, they see a store that does sell masks. The problem is that the owner tells our young heroes that he has not sold any mask that has the face of the president nor the first lady. But you did have the owner tell our young heroes that he may have an idea of two people who may be holding on to masks like that. Now, getting back over to Implate and also, well, DOA, we do learn the door is technically an interdimensional door. And once they open it, you did have Chimera appear. Now, Chimera is a character that we had talked in an earlier storyline involving Wolverine when you had a son of Cable, Tyler Dayspring, trying to rebond adamantium on the bones of Wolverine. It was a very interesting storyline. But when it comes to Chimera, she is a interdimensional pirate. But either way, with her being here, it kind of begins the process of these two characters, her and Implate, beginning to work together. But getting back over to our young heroes, with the info that they have gained from the shop owner, they now know where to go when it comes to finding the two people who have robbed their home, who have robbed the school. And so they find one of the two robbers trying to leave the house they had just robbed. Now, we do learn here the two young robbers who had robbed the school earlier, well, they work for Dorian and Weasel. And remember, those two guys are the ones who were messing with our young heroes at the diner, the two people who are always up to no good. But apparently, they have been forcing two young kids to go around the area to rob different homes around the area. And every single thing they stolen must go back to Weasel and Dorian. And so you didn't have the New Mutants, not the New Mutants, oh my God. You have Generation X going out of their way to bring down both Dorian and Weasel. Now, once that's done right there, you didn't have our young heroes being able to regain only half the things that were stolen. And the reason why, because the other robber is not there. And you didn't have the young boy inform us like the name of the other person who had robbed the school earlier. It's a young girl, and her name is Tracy. And Tracy is the daughter to the sheriff we saw earlier. And so right now, we get the idea the sheriff has no idea that his daughter is going around different homes across the area and stealing different things from those homes. Now, as we get into the opening pages for the next chapter, we do pick up with Banshee coming back home to the school. Now, when he does walk in, you have Emma Frost just straight up punch him right in the face. And the reason why, because, well, back in issue number 31, when it came to Emma Frost almost giving Pennis over to Implate, you had Banshee attack her. And so this is Emma Frost just getting her lick back. Now, you do have the students come down and say hello to Banshee, and you didn't have Banshee inform everyone that he has some information about the twins that he had received from Moira Taggart. Now, unfortunately, we don't get a chance to learn a lot about what Moira Taggart had told Banshee. The only thing we do learn here is that when it came to Moira Taggart, she feels like the idea of Monet was not really a person who was split in two, that technically it was two people who came together as one. But she also kind of feels like the twins did not really have a choice when it came to them being forced together to make the Monet character. So now the question is, why in the world were they forced to change into Monet? Now, the reason why we're not technically able to learn more about what's going on with the twins turning into Monet is because the school gets a call. Now, the call is from Tracy, the young girl we saw in the last chapter. Now, you have Skin answer the phone, and when he does, she informs him like, hey, listen, we need to meet up because I have some of the things that y'all want back from me, but also the fact like, if you don't come see me, I'm going to tell the public everything about your school. And let's not forget, when it comes to Charles Xavier School, to the public, it's just a school for gifted students. They don't really know the idea of the school is technically made for mutants. And so for Skin, he begins to freak out. He grabs Jubilee and also Husk, and they leave the school to go meet up with Tracy. And when they do meet up with Tracy, she does reveal that she has some items that belong to Husk, Skin, and also Jubilee. But she wants to know the backstory to all these different items before she is able to hand them over to the students. Now, for a brief moment, we have to shift over to Implate and Chimera. Now, when it comes to these two characters, is Implate realizing that Chimera has the ability to rip a hole through space and time, and that portal can lead her into anywhere she wants it to go to. And so for Implate, this is technically perfect. And the reason why, because he wants to abduct one certain mutant. Now, getting back over to Jubilee, Husk, and also Skin, you do have Tracy say one more time, like she wants to know the backstory of each of the items that she has stolen from the characters. Like, for example, Wolverine's hat. She wants to know the backstory behind the hat. And so you have Jubilee explain, like, it came from Logan, aka Wolverine. But it's the idea that to her, the hat is very important. And the reason why, because for Logan, he has gone through so much. He has sacrificed so much in his life. But no matter what, he always tries his best to protect the people around him, especially Jubilee. Now, for Jubilee, she calls Logan her best friend. But for me personally, it's kind of like, no. She looks to Logan as a father figure. And I will always say that when it comes to Jubilee and Kitty Pryde. Because for me, Kitty Pryde was the 80s version of like Wolverine's daughter. Because, you know, Wolverine, he always had a sidekick. In the 80s, it was Kitty Pryde. In the 90s, it was Jubilee. In the 2000s, for me personally, X-23. But each of those characters look up to Logan as a father figure. And so for me, it's Jubilee showing how much she loves Wolverine as a father in her life. Now, the next item belongs to Skin. Now, this is a callback to the idea that for Skin, he was part of the whole like gang life. And so the gun reminds him of a time where he was technically part of a drive-by. And so he kind of keeps that gun to remind him where he came from and the life he left behind. Because remember, for Skin, he had faked his death to kind of get away from that area. Now, the last item is the diary that belongs to, well, Paige, of course, being Husk. And so with the diary, of course, it talks about the idea of creatures and sentinels and, like, of course, Chamber as well, because for Husk, as we all know, she's somewhat dating Chamber at the moment. But and so with Tracy kind of reading the diary, you did have our heroes being able to retrieve all the different items that she was holding on to. But then Tracy said, listen, I want in on your little circle, but also I want you guys to help me with a certain problem. Now, this kind of leads us into the ending of today's video, because when we do jump back over to school, we see that when it comes to Chimera, she did open up one of her portals. And of course, you have Implate being able to now walk into the school. Now, for Penance, she wants to protect the twins. Once the twins do wake up, they go ahead and recombine together once again to make Monet. They don't stop there because you didn't have Monet use whatever power she has to touch Implate. And when that happens, it does seem like Implate and also Monet had combined together into one to create this new character. The problem is that we have no idea who's in charge of this brand new body. Okay, so when it comes to our coverage over Generation X, I didn't realize that we were about to dive into a long story arc that might take us like a couple of videos to kind of get through. Now, unfortunately, that means, yeah, guys, you're going to have like 2 to 3, possibly 4 videos to kind of tell this entire storyline that we are about to work our way through. Now, with that being said, this video does pick up where our last one left off at. Now, in our last video, really our last couple of videos, we have learned a few things about Monet, and let me explain. You see, for the entire time in our coverage over Generation X, we had this character known as Monet. The problem was that we didn't know her backstory, but then over time, you're going to learn a tad bit more about her. Like, for example, that she is the sister to Implate. We also learn here that when it comes to Monet, that's not her actual form, it seems like. Or Monet is not really a person. Let me explain. Because at the end of Operation Zero Tolerance, we saw Monet change into 2 young girls who are technically twins. And we learn the twins have the ability to combine together to take that Monet form. Now, we still do not know the actual backstory of the twins just yet, but at the end of our last video, you had Implate appear at the school of Charles Xavier, hoping to kidnap Pennis. The problem was that you had the twins being able to touch their brother and create this new character, a combination of Implate and also the twins. Now, before we sit down and technically talk about the whole idea of this new character, I want to shift over into the opening pages for issue number 35 and focus on a character known as Tracy. Now, when it comes to Tracy, we saw her in our last video because when it came to Tracy and her partner, they had technically robbed a school that belongs to Charles Xavier. Now, for our students, they were able to find her partner, but then later on they met up with her. Now, she did promise to give everything back, including the diary that belongs to Husk. But she said, before I do that, you guys have to help me out. You guys have to allow me into your school, it seems like, or allow me into your inner circle. And so you have the young students right now, like Skin, Husk, and also Jubilee, bringing Tracy back to their school. The thing is, they don't know what's happening on the inside of their school. And of course, it's a whole big time battle. You have Generation X fighting against Chimera. You also have our heroes fighting against this new character, the combination of M-Plate and also, well, the twins. And they call themselves M-Plate. Yeah, you heard that right. M-Plate. Not M-Plate, M-Plate. But either way, for our heroes, they're right now trying their best to battle against this new character. And you have Banshee right now trying to use his powers to hopefully bring everyone down who's technically an enemy to our heroes. Now, with him using his powers and him being sent out the front door of the school, you didn't have Husk realize that she got to take Tracy somewhere else to hide the fact that this entire school is really made for mutants, and also want to make sure the school stays a secret for what it's really about. And so you have Husk go ahead and grab Tracy and takes her over to the biosphere. Now, the biosphere is where our young heroes usually train at. And so for Husk, she's kind of hoping to leave Tracy there as a way to protect her, but to also kind of keep Tracy away from the battle long enough for our heroes to handle this whole entire situation. But when it comes to M-Plate's right now having a hard time deciding which side it should technically be on. And the reason why, because it's the combination of 2 different parties. You see, for M-Plate, he had to deal with Chimera. When it came to the twins, well, they were working with Generation X. So right now for M-Plate, it's kind of like, whose side should I be on? But you didn't have M-Plate decide to go ahead and fight against our heroes. We also see how powerful M-Plate truly is by being able to open up a portal, by controlling the interdimensional energy in the room, and being able to cut a hole through space and time to allow the bad guys a way to escape. You also have M-Plate grab Sync, and the reason why is unknown because, well, It's not told to us. But you also have M-Play say, listen, I need sync for something else down the road. And so you have M-Play, Chimera, and also Sync go through the portal, getting away from Generation X. Now, for Jubilee, she did try her best to fight against M-Play at the very last second there. You had M-Play being able to mess with the mind of Jubilee, kind of make her go through some kind of dream sequence. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to explain the whole idea of the dream sequence because it's not really that important. But once you do have, Emma Frost being able to wake up Jubilee, you didn't have everyone realize that one, M-Play, Chimera, and also Sync got away, but also they hear a scream. We have to remember about Tracy, who was left behind the biosphere. The problem is that when they go over to the biosphere, well, Tracy is not there. Tracy has disappeared. And let's not forget, the biosphere is kind of like our young hero's own version of the danger room. So the question is right now, where in the world is Tracy at? And so now we dive into Generation X issue number 36. Now, this issue is where the story kind of goes a tad bit bonkers. And technically, it makes a lot of sense. And the reason why, because Larry Hama is the one writing the storyline. And because Larry Hama, he's an amazing writer, but sometimes his stories kind of go just, whoo, they go right out the field. And so with that being said, we do pick up with our heroes right now, kind of wondering like what happened to Tracy. Now, you have our heroes kind of begin to realize that most likely the token has returned. Now, the token is this creature of death. Now, when it comes to Marvel Comics, they really explain the whole idea of tokens, and I try my best to go online and learn more about the actual creature and what kind of culture it belongs to. But just know that it's this creature that we see in an earlier part of our coverage over the X-Men. I want to say back in Wolverine comics when you had Larry Hama as the writer of Wolverine. But either way, they kind of believe the token has came back into the biosphere and must have taken Tracy somewhere. And so you didn't have our young heroes split up to hopefully find Tracy. While you have our young heroes look around the biosphere, when it comes to Chamber and also Jubilee, they run into another mythical creature better known as a puka. Yes, you heard that right, a puka. Now, I did learn the puka is a supernatural being that comes out of like Irish lore. And usually there are shape-shifting beings that can bring good fortune or bad fortune into your life. And sometimes take forms of rabbits, horse, dogs. They do take different kinds of forms. But then out of nowhere, you didn't have the story shift over to Weasel and also Dorian. Now, we met these characters in our last video. And for these two characters, what they did was they forced two young kids, Tracy being one of them, and her friend Amon, to go around the different homes in the city and steal different things from the homes and then take those things away from Tracy and Amon. That's how our young heroes ran into Tracy because Tracy and Amon stole things from the school and of course had to give those things over to Weasel and also Dorian. But right now we're seeing the two young boys trying to force Amon to steal more things from a nearby home or a nearby business. Now, they are caught by Tracy's father, who is the sheriff of the city. And of course, you didn't have the owner of the store go out of his way to protect Amon. But when it comes to Weasel and also Dorian, they're most likely going to get arrested and go to jail. Now, getting back over to Jubilee and also, well, Chamber, this is where the story goes even crazier because for the Puka, his main goal is to bring good fortune for our heroes. Now, they believe that means helping them find Tracy, but he says, listen, I'm no longer allowed to interfere with Token at all anymore because I broke some big rules when it comes to us mythical beings. But I can help you in a different area, like, for example, finding your missing friend Sync. And so you have Puka pull out this random like vehicle, then open up a portal that's going to lead our heroes all the way over to New York City. But once you do have Jubilee and also Chamber arrive in New York City, Puka disappears. But you didn't have our two heroes go around asking folks like, hey, have you seen this random creature known as the Puka? And every single person they ask basically says no. Then the last guy didn't tell us what our heroes should do next. they should go find and ask help from Landau, Luckman, and Lake. Now, this is an organization that we had talked a lot about when it came to Wolverine comics. And again, Larry Hama is the writer of the storyline. It was him kind of brought in the whole idea of Landau, Luckman, and Lake because they are this like interdimensional like organization that at first their main goal was to watch over Wolverine's assets, but then they kind of got their hands in other kinds of business. But back at the school, you still have the rest of the team walking around the area of the biosphere to hopefully find the token, but to also find Tracy. The thing is that out of nowhere, they're here shooting. We kind of find out the sheriff had arrived at the school, and the reason why they heard shooting because he shot a rat, a huge rat. But here's the thing, that huge rat is technically a mutant, better known as Dirt Nap. And we met Dirt Nap in an earlier storyline when it came to Wolverine comics. Dirt Nap has the ability to absorb other people and then take the form of that person that he had absorbed. They include animals as well. But for Dirt Nap, he's technically working right now with Chimera. He also has a piece of technology on him. Now, for our heroes, they believe that he is dead because, well, the sheriff has shot the rat a couple of times. But now this begins the process of us seeing our heroes all be teleported to where Sync, M-Plate, and Chimera are currently at, because you didn't have Jubilee and also Chamber run into the Puka again. Now when they do, you have the Puka take our two young heroes into the office of Landau, Luckman, and Lake. And when he does that, he shows this door. Now remember guys, Landau, Luckman, and Lake, they are an interdimensional organization. They have ways to travel across the world or different dimensions with these doors. And so this door right here can most likely take Jubilee and also Chamber to where Sync, M-Plate, and Chimera are currently at. When it comes to the rest of their team though, the ones back at the school of Charles Xavier, well, they have Dirt Nap. And for Dirt Nap, he has a device that will open up a portal to allow our heroes to travel to where Sync, M-Plate, and also Chimera are currently at. So you didn't have our heroes go through the portal to hopefully find their lost teammate. But when it comes to Sync, M-Plate, and also Chimera, we do learn very quickly that right now they're at the edge of reality. And the reason why, because for M-Plate, he or she wants to find the amalgamator. Now, this device is really powerful, and the reason why, because then it has the ability to combine her mind to the other minds of other powerful beings across the universe. Powerful godly beings across the universe are most likely the multiverse. If that happens, then she might have the ability to use her own mind to control the other minds of those other powerful beings across the universe. But she needs the help of Sync. And so now we dive into issue number 37, and this storyline gets even crazier, y'all. Like, Larry Hama, I don't understand what's going on here. I do, but like, it's just wild because now we pick up with Jubilee and also Chamber with the Puka in a different reality. In this reality, there's a T-Rex that has these eyes that come out of his head. And when you do have Chamber try to use his powers on the T-Rex, it's just able to regrow his eyes right back plus 2 more. Like, it has 4 eyes. It is pretty wild and crazy. But you didn't have Chamber once again being able to use his powers to burn off the top part of the body of this dinosaur. Now, once they do that, you then have Puka say, hey, listen, let me show you that I'm somebody that you can trust. And so you have Puka kind of show Chamber and also Jubilee that technically right now they're on the right path to find Sync, M-Plate, and also Chimera. Now, we do switch over to M-Plate and also Chimera. Now, when we do switch over to those characters, we still see them trying to work their way over to the temple that is currently holding on to the amalgamator. Now, when they do arrive inside the temple, they see this young woman. And apparently this young woman is also a mutant like Sync, but apparently she's the guardian, but also the prisoner of the device that M-Plate currently wants and needs so badly at the moment. Now, for Banshee's crew, they also arrive in the same reality as the other two parties. The only difference is that when they do arrive in this reality, it's snowing and it's also really cold as well. Now, you do have our hero find a train. Now, once you get on the train, they see a list of different stopping points for the train. The last stop is very important. And the reason why, because you have Dirt Nap tell the heroes, like, oh, that goes to where, of course, the Amalgator is at. And so you didn't have Banshee say, I'm pretty sure, knowing Mplay and Chimera, they have Sync over there. So let's go ahead and head over there to hopefully save Sync's life. Now, when we do switch back over to like the main Marvel universe and pick up with, well, Emma Frost and Skin, they're still with the sheriff at the moment who's looking for his daughter Tracy somewhere in her school. But then out of nowhere, you have the sheriff say like, oh, you guys have a token. Now, this is where we kind of learn that he knows a tad bit more about the token than our heroes do. The idea that it belongs to Chinese mythos. But it's also him saying like tokens usually go out of their way to take things. You make a deal with tokens by leaving out a pile of silver or some kind of food as well. Now, for Emma Frost and Skin, they're very surprised in the idea that this man knows what a token is and like how to take it down or at least make a deal with it. And you then have the sheriff realize that, well, Weasel and also Dorian were kind of wandering around the school and kind of eavesdropping on the conversation he was having with Emma Frost and also Skin. Now, when it comes to all our different heroes who are right now in different parts of the reality where Mplay, Chimera, and also Sync are at, they're both right now taking different paths that supposedly leads them right over to where Sync, Mplay, and Chimera are at. Now, while taking these paths, you do have a few things happen. Like, for example, for Chamber, Puka, and also Jubilee, as they're going down their path through some kind of big, huge stone door that says Mora, when they do open it up, you didn't have them crossing a bridge. The bridge does collapse because Chambers says collapse on accident, and now those three characters are free falling for their lives. And when it comes to Banshee's crew, they're on the train right now, making their way over to Sync and also Mplay and Chimera. Now, while they're doing that, well, you then have, well, Husk and also Pennis begin the process of being nice to Dirt Nap to the point where, like, it might turn him into an actual good person. And for Emma Frost and Skin, they begin the process of trying to hand over a pile of different things to trade with the token. And once they do leave it out and come right back to the treehouse, they find Tracy and the other two students like Artie and also Leech just having a good old time, but they're now no longer being held hostage by the token. So that whole idea right there has been handled. Okay, so like it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over, well, Generation X. Now, here's the thing, because we're still covering this long storyline that was written by Larry Hama, and I love Larry Hama, dude. Great writer. He wrote Wolverine for a very long time, but occasionally he will give you a story. That's just, for me personally, just way out of the left field. And what I mean by that is it's gone completely bonkers. And it's one of those stories where it's almost like 9, 10 parts. I think it's 8 parts long. And the story just goes all over the place. But it's also the idea of Larry Hama kind of giving us the answer behind M-Plate and also Monet and the twins and even like Pennis as well. Like, it's Larry Hama has best set everything up for us. But getting into issue number 38, we kind of pick up where our last video had left off at, where you now have both parties of our heroes being able to reunite with one another. And the reason why I'm saying that, because in our last video, you had our heroes travel into this alternate reality, trying to get to Chimera, M-Plate, and also Sync, who are in an alternate reality. Now, for our heroes, when they did arrive in the alternate reality, they had arrived at different points in the alternate reality, but now they're being able to regroup with one another. Now remember, when it comes to M-Plate, they have this plan to conjoin all sentient entities in existence into a single omni personality by utilizing this one mutant girl known as Gaia. Now for Gaia, she'll become somewhat very important in the storyline, and she will reappear in other storylines down the road. But for right now, for Gaia, when it comes to M-Plate, she needs her to trigger a certain device, better known as the ultimate. And guys, I am going to mispronounce this, but the ultimate amalgamator, the amalgamator. Whoo! I already know that somebody in the comment section is making fun of me. But anyways, though, for Gaia, like they need her to trigger that device to help M-Play's plan out here. Now, for M-Play, she believes once the device is triggered, it will be the beginning of all things, a dawning of ultimate awareness, the master of a godhead. Now, Chimera is there with her. And when it comes to Chimera, it's her kind of beginning to realize that maybe M-Play is going to tap it too far here. Now, for Gaia, she says, hey, listen, I don't want to help you. But the thing is, they can use Sync to basically go on with their plan, because with Sync, he has the ability to copy other mutant abilities, and Gaia is a mutant. Now, for Chimera, it does seem like she is killed off when she tries to talk back to M-Plate. Now, there is another character I do want to talk about, and that would be Dirtnap. Now, for Dirtnap, he appeared a while ago in our coverage over the X-Men. For Dirtnap, he has the ability to basically absorb other people. Like, he's kind of like a shapeshifter, but in a messed up way, and let me explain. You see, once he does absorb your body, he's then able to take on your form, use your body as a way to hide in the world. Now, usually he does have a human form, but there was a storyline where, unfortunately, he took on the form of a rat. So even though he can still use his powers, once he goes back to his default form is the rat. Now, he was a bad guy who was technically working with Chimera and also M-Plate. But with our young heroes like, Husk, being nice to him is him now kind of beginning the process of becoming a good guy. Now, there was this other storyline going on when it came to a character known as Tracy. And matter of fact, you don't really know much about her for right now. Just know that Tracy was a young girl causing a lot of problems for our heroes in the early parts of the storyline. But she was taken by a token, this Chinese creature. Now, this creature basically gave her back, and also Artie and Leech as well, once you had Skin and also Emma Frost do a trade with the creature. Now, the thing is, you didn't have the creature inform Tracy that it does have the ability to help out Emma Frost and also Skin to help bring the friend back home. Of course, talking about Sync, who's currently a prisoner to M-Plate. And so for Emma Frost to hear this, she's all like, wait, it can do what for us? But now we have to switch over to Mr. Timmons, Weasel, and Dorian. Now for Weasel and Dorian, they are two characters we met a while ago when it came to our coverage over this storyline right here. There were two boys who were always just getting into trouble. But of course now they're kind of like, I guess, trying to be better, but not really. They're kind of forced to help out Mr. Timmons with his shop. Now it's him right now heading home for the day. But while he is leaving, he informs the boys, hey, guys, do not go through that door right there. Now the door is labeled WC. As we all know, that's part of the Landau, Luckman, and Lake organization. Now, that organization at first was kind of like this company that would go out of their way to watch over Wolverine's assets. But we kind of learned that there is some kind of interdimensional organization that have their hands in so many different things. But right now, it's him telling the boys, do not go through that door, because if you do, it might take you somewhere else. And so this leads us into the ending of this chapter, because once you do have our heroes arrive to where like M-Plate is at, you didn't have our heroes realize how powerful M-Plate is, because M-Plate is the combination of M-Plate and also, well, the twins who made up Monet in the earlier parts of this series. So a very powerful character. Now for our heroes, they're in luck because they have Dirtnap. You have Dirtnap being able to just swallow M-Plate whole. Now we're kind of left to believe that there's a possibility that he might absorb M-Plate and take on that form. We don't know at the moment, but we then switch back over to Emma Frost and also Skin, but at the same time, we also jump back over to Weasel and Dorian because while you do have Weasel and Dorian about to go through a door that could lead them somewhere else, you have Tracy and former Emma Frost and also Skin to go to a nearby station and wait there for their friends to finally come back home. Now, for Larry Hama, it's now him beginning the process of wrapping everything up for us. Because as we dive into issue number 39, we're really getting into the idea of like, where is the real Monet? And it all starts with Dirt Nap. And let me explain. Because with Dirt Nap in the last chapter, he absorbed Emplate. With him doing that and then releasing Emplate, well, the twins are no longer connected to their brother Emplate. So now they're technically free again. But you didn't have the twins tell us they know the actual secret that Emplate has been hiding. And the same thing goes to Emplate. He knows their secret as well. But the idea of where is the real Monet will be told to us very soon. But this leads into another problem when it comes to our heroes who are currently in other reality right now, and the Citadel is beginning to fall apart. And that is a major problem because the whole idea of this Citadel is what kind of keeping our heroes alive at the moment. Once it's gone, our heroes could be lost in reality forever. Now, for Emplate and DOA, they were able to open up a portal to get the heck out of that reality and most likely go back into the main Marvel universe. But when it comes to our heroes, they have to use the train they got in the last video to get back home. Now, for Sync, he does not want to leave Gaia behind at all. He wants to help her be free. But for Gaia, she's chained down. And apparently the chains are unbreakable. But you do have Banshee go out of his way to knock out Sync, to grab Sync, and put him on the train so that they can finally leave. But the thing is, for Banshee, he didn't hit Sync hard enough to officially knock him out. So you have Sync being able to copy the powers of Banshee, jump off the train, go back down to where Gaia was at, and Penance also goes with them as well to help Sync to break Gaia free. The problem is that the train leaves those three characters behind, but for Gaia, she does have another way to leave that reality. But for our heroes, they do get on the train, and that train does take them back over to the main Marvel universe. But here's the catch. They go to a train station that is technically underneath the treehouse that's in the biosphere. The biosphere is kind of like our young heroes version of the danger room, and they have a treehouse in the biosphere. But here's the catch. That train station is apparently underneath the treehouse, but only one doorway leads into that train station that's supposedly underneath the treehouse. But either way, once you do have Emma Frost and Skin go ahead and confront the heroes who are on the train, for Banshee, he's freaking out. And the reason why, because they left Sync and Penance behind with Gaia. They don't know that technically for Gaia, she has another way back home. And that other way is actually a portal that goes through the door that Mr. Timmons told Weasel and Dorian do not go through. So of course, for Sync and Gaia, I almost call her Gaia. For Gaia, they're able to walk through that door. Now for Gaia, she realized that technically she's free. And so she runs away to celebrate. You have Penance fall after her, but you didn't have Sync get caught up with Weasel and also, well, Dorian as well. Now, unfortunately for Weasel and Dorian, they don't like Sync. They think he's a geek and they begin to beat him down. Now, for me personally, I had a problem with this. And the reason why, because these kids, these Generation X kids who are part of the X family, they have been trained to fight back against all different types of crazy things. But Sync cannot handle two guys by himself. But either way, he does get beat down. And so when you do have the rest of our heroes go look for Sync, they find him, but in the middle of the road, badly beaten. And so as we get into the final chapter for today's video, we do pick up with Sync right now in the hospital. Now, with him being in the hospital, you have everyone else there just wondering, like, is Sync going to be okay? Now, here's the problem, though, because for Sync, while being in the hospital, his powers begin to activate without his control, because Sync right now is in a coma. But either way for Sync, he's now being able to sync with other people's powers, like Emma Frost's powers, just for example. And so it does cause a lot of commotion in the actual hospital room. Now, you did have Emma Frost go out of her way to make sure the doctor doesn't get what she had just saw. But you did have one of the twins, Claudette, being able to go into the mind of Sync to help him calm down, but to also bring him out of his coma. Now, once that's done right there, you then have Sync say by using the powers of Emma Frost to read the minds of every single person in that room, including the twins, it's now time for Sync to force the twins to kind of tell them the whole entire story about them, Monet, and also Implay. Now, let's not forget, Sync was badly beaten by Weasel and also Dorian. And so you do have the sheriff of the town bring those two over to kind of say like, hey, we know these two guys beat you up. But for Sync, he's not really trying to get those boys in trouble. And the reason why, because he has two other things to worry about. The idea where Gaia's at, but also the big secret the twins have been hiding this entire time. And so we're given a flashback. Now, with this flashback, we do learn that for the twins, Monet, and also Implate, they're all related to one another. And so when it comes to Implate being the oldest out of everybody, when his powers first began to manifest, he had to feed the hunger inside of him. You see, that hunger inside of him basically made him want to feed off genetic marrow. Now, he did kill off his mother, and he was sent away for what he did to his mother, but then he came back, and we learned that he was away in a different reality. When he came back here, he had learned about the powers of his sister, Monet, and so he felt like if they worked together, they have the chance to go ahead and rule over both this reality and the other one that he had left. The problem was that for Monet, by this point in time, she was the favorite child to her father. So, of course, she's very big-headed. Like, she's not very humble about herself. And so when it comes to her brother, she was all like, listen, there's no way I'll go back to you somewhere else, a different reality, to rule over that reality, then come back here to our reality, do the same thing all over again. There's no way. But she's also making fun of him as well, but also his appearance. And so for Implate, he got so upset, he changed the form of Monet into that red hard shell person that we have been seeing the entire time, better known as Penis. Now, for the twins, when they had walked into the room, they believed their brother had killed off their sister, but not realizing that their sister was Penis. And so when it came to twins banishing Implate, you also had Penis go with Implate, and the twins never knowing that Penis is their sister in reality. Now, with both brother and sister gone, you didn't have the twins realize that their father is going to be upset. And the reason why, because Monet was his favorite child. And so you had the girls went ahead and combined together to take the form of their sister, Monet. So with that flashback, we learn that Penis is the original Monet. But this kind of leads into another problem, though, because once you do have everyone realize that Monet is Penis, the original Monet is Penis, you then have the twins basically trade places with their sister. So that means when it comes to the twins, they are now in the form of Penis while allowing Monet to be her original self again. Now, the only way to help save the twins is to find Implate, to have Implate to free the twins from the form of Penis. But now it's time for us to go ahead and work our way into the next story arc for our young heroes, because we do pick up in space on the dark side of the moon. And we pick up with this alien race right now that are being confronted by a new character that apparently has close connections to Emma Frost. And that would be Bianca Laneige. I really hope I pronounced that correctly. But when it comes to Bianca, apparently she has some kind of connection to Emma Frost, that Emma Frost has sent her away. And so this is her right now trying her best to come back to Earth. Now, the aliens that she confronted, she didn't use her powers on those aliens to change their forms to look like human dwarves. But either way, she's right now working her way back over to Earth. And so you really had the story kind of end on the note where you have our heroes wondering where to go next because now they have to find Implate to help the twins out, but also how long can the twins stay in that form together, but also kind of locked in that form being penance, where they're really unable to speak to one another. But also, like, when Bianca comes, can our heroes save the day? Okay, so I didn't know this. I really sat down internet and did some research, and I had no idea that a lot of people did not like Larry Hama's run on Generation X. For me personally, it's just okay. Not amazing, it's not horrible, but for a lot of people, they hate the run. And I kind of see why, but it's Larry Hama. Let me explain. As y'all know, Larry Hama is probably the best writer for Wolverine. Like, there's Chris Claremont, there's Larry Hama. I know some folks out there, they put Larry first. For some folks out there, they put Chris first. It goes vice versa. But when it came to Larry Hama, occasionally he would give us those like random wacky stories. You're like, a little bit too wacky for Wolverine, but like, okay, get back on track now, Larry. And he would. But I feel like for him, coming over to Generation X, it kind of felt like the door was open for him to do all kinds of wacky stories. And this, for me personally, is another one where we see a character coming back into the picture. Really sorry, scratch that. She's coming back to Earth, but it is her first appearance in Marvel Comics, and it's also her coming after Emma Frost to get revenge. Now, I do know for some people out there, they didn't like the idea of Terry Dawson's artwork either once you had him officially take over as the artist for Generation X. But anyways, getting into the opening pages for issue number 42, we do pick up with our heroes right now, just playing some good old miniature golf. It's a good old fun activity. And you do have Banshee of all people kind of taking the game very seriously. And Emma Frost, she's winning just left and right, holding one in every single hole. But we do see a few things happening at this golf course. Like, for example, the idea of two random girls beginning to have a crush on Chamber. They find him attractive, don't realize that behind that scarf, he may no longer be so attractive like they think he is. But either way, while you do have all these different things going on, we also see that the new character is also here and beginning her plan to come after Emma Frost, and that would be Bianca. Now, we had met Bianca in an earlier video we had done for Generation X. And when it comes to Bianca, we had learned that she was also part of the Hellfire Club. But she looked at Emma Frost as this rival that she had to bring down, especially after you had Emma Frost going out of her way to take over Bianca's company. And so for Bianca, she wanted revenge against Emma Frost even back then. And so she used one of her company's research projects that involved alien technology and tried to use it against Emma Frost, but unfortunately it backfired and sent her into a different dimension. Now, she was able to come back, but now it's her saying, you know what, it's time for me to get revenge against Emma Frost. Now, we also have to remember that when it came to Bianca, she also has the ability to manipulate energy and matter around her. And so when it came to her coming back into the main dimension, the main Marvel universe, well, we saw her being able to use that power on some random aliens and kind of turn them into doors and basically force them to work for her. And she says once they're done with her mission, she'll then turn them back into normal. Now, this storyline also takes place around the same time as X-Men issue number 77 and 78. The idea of the storyline called Psy-War, where you had the Shadow King go out of his way to take over the astral plane. Now, when he did that, he made sure that all telepaths were off the board. So Jean Grey, Emma Frost, Psylocke, and also now apparently Bianca and Chamber as well. Now, we had covered a storyline that involved Jean Grey being affected by this. And so now it's kind of us seeing how Emma Frost, Chamber, and even Bianca is also being affected by this. Because once you do have that side wave hit the entire world, hitting all telepaths across the world, you have Chamber pass out, you have Emma Frost fall down, and you have Bianca also get knocked out as well because that side wave did a number to all telepaths across the board. But once you do have everyone being able to wake back up after being hit by the side wave the Shadow King had created, well, this leads into a whole lot of things popping off at the golf course because the two girls from earlier who were hitting on Chamber, well, they begin the process of pulling down his mask or his scarf. Now, let's not forget, when it comes to Chamber, behind that scarf, there's no mouth there. The bottom part of his face and also the upper part of his body is missing and been replaced with psionic energy, but that psionic energy keeps him alive. And so when they do pull down that scarf, they realize that he is not normal at all. Now, of course, with the two girls kind of freaking out and everything else happening, the golf course owner also comes out and sees some kind of energy or his mindset fire behind the boy's scarf. And so he also begins to freak out. And so for Generation X, they realize that most likely they should go ahead and just leave and head back over to school. But on the way home to the school, you didn't have our heroes realize that there was some kind of car accident. And the person who was involved in that car accident is no other than Gaia. Now, we have talked about her character in some of our earlier videos when it came to Generation X. Here's the problem, though, when it comes to Gaia. We never did learn what her origin is. And when it comes to Marvel Comics, we still haven't up to the present day. And so for Gaia, all we know is that she is a mutant that was sent into another dimension to basically be a safeguard for a very powerful device in that dimension. Now, thanks to our last storyline, she was finally able to be free and come into the main Marvel universe. And so right now we see that she got into a car accident. And the reason why, because she was also affected by the psi wave as well. But for our heroes, they weren't the first one to arrive at the scene. Matter of fact, you had the sheriff of the city arrive at the scene first, and that would be Sheriff Autier. Now, we met him like a couple of videos ago, and when it came to the sheriff, at first we kind of left to believe that he was just your regular police officer, and that was really it. But he also kind of occasionally drops hints here and there that kind of says like there's a possibility that he is a mutant. And matter of fact, this is one of those moments again because he also kind of speaks in the way of knowing that Emma Frost, Chamber, and also Gaia are mutants, but psychic mutants. But he also knows the rest of the crew is also mutants as well, but also kind of hinting that he's also a psychic mutant that was also affected by the psi wave. Either way, he says, you know what, guys, take the girl and take her to your school right now. And again, our heroes leave. But to close on the first chapter of the storyline, we do pick up with Bianca. And you have Bianca right now just beating down on her crew. And the reason why, because they were going to kill her off while she was knocked out thanks to the psi wave. But they realized that they couldn't do that because if they do kill her off, then they lose the chance of being turned back to their normal forms again. And so they kind of stopped trying to kill her. But either way, she's still very upset about the idea they even thought about doing that to her in the first place. But either way, while you do have Bianca right now just beating down on her crew while their spacecraft flies around the Earth, they get knocked out the sky by another aircraft. And that would be LCD and also Albert. And LCD and Albert are very important characters for, well, Wolverine comics. And so as we move on to issue number 43, we're really getting into the idea of us seeing Banshee right now, giving Emma Frost and also Chamber a training session. And the reason why, because with the idea of the Shadow King taking over the astral plane and cutting off some of the abilities for telepaths across the world, for Banshee, he wants to make sure that for Chamber and also Emma Frost, they're still okay to be out there in the field with the rest of the team. Now, we also learn here that Emma Frost, she's an amazing fighter. But for Chamber, it's the idea that now he lost the ability to communicate. Because for Chamber, he really did rely on the idea of being a telepath to communicate with his teammates. With that now being gone, it's kind of like, how can he warn the other team members out in the field? And so for Banshee, he kind of goes through this whole training session for Chamber and also Emma Frost. Now, after that, some time has passed by, and we do see Singh going to the door to basically pick up a piece of delivery that he had ordered for the entire crew. The problem is that the two people who are delivering the pizza are the same two people who attacked Singh a while ago. Dorian and Weasel. Now, technically, these two characters are not really important, so we could actually go ahead and move on with our lives. But while you do have the two guys trying to deliver pizza, but also somewhat making a threat, well, out of nowhere, their car is completely crushed by a spacecraft. Of course, that spacecraft belongs to Bianca. And unfortunately, the reason why I say unfortunately is because the rest of this chapter is really more of us just seeing the new, I almost said the new mutants, seeing Generation X fighting against Bianca and the forces she brought with her. So we do get that one-on-one battle between Bianca and Emma Frost. Now again, with the astral plane being controlled by the Shadow King, it technically means the battle is really evenly matched. But you do have Emma Frost show off that she can use the environment around her as a way to bring down Bianca. And the thing is, she used different things in the kitchen to allow her the ability to win. But again, it still counts. And so by the end of this chapter, we do see Emma Frost had defeated Bianca. We also see the rest of the crew for Generation X were able to stop Bianca's group, but you did have a phone call happen. And the phone call is Teresa, better known as Siren, also better known as the daughter of Banshee. But as we move on to issue number 44, we're now picking up a few hours after the ending for issue number 43. And we do learn that when it came to Bianca and her crew, they're now being forced to do repairs to the biosphere that belongs to Generation X. Now, the biosphere is like the danger room for Generation X. But while you have them fixing that, for Banshee, Chamber, and also Husk, they're going to go ahead over to the airport. And the reason why, because for Husk, she's going back home for a short period of time. Now, we had talked about the idea of her mother getting very sick because remember, guys, Husk is the sister to Cannonball. And so over in X-Force Comics, we saw Cannonball go back home and find out that his mom's very sick and, of course, needs a treatment. And so for Husk, she's also heading back home as well. But also for Banshee, his daughter is paying a visit. Again, that will be Siren. But now we have to switch over to Jubilee and also Gaia. Now for Jubilee, she's kind of wondering what to do here. And let me explain, because for Jubilee, she does have a crush on Sync. But the thing is, Sync has a crush on Gaia. And so for Jubilee, she's kind of wondering, even if she does have a chance to be with Sync, because right now Sync is trying to get with Gaia. But while you do have Jubilee talk to the Gaia about the idea of Sync liking Gaia, you have Jubilee realize that Sync is leaving the school for some kind of reason, but he's also carrying a cigar box. Now, we had learned earlier on our coverage over Generation X that when it came to a cigar box, for Skin, he had kept a gun inside a cigar box. And so for Jubilee, she's kind of wondering if there is a possibility that Sync might use that gun on people who had hurt him in the past. Now, for a brief moment, we do go over to the airport where we do see Banshee, Chamber, and also Husk pick up Teresa, better known as Siren. Now, there is a layover for 2 hours, so it gives the chance for basically Banshee and also Teresa have a conversation with one another, but also give a chance for Chamber and also Husk to have some alone time before she heads back home on her flight. Now, you do have the story kind of shift back and forth between three different moments happening at the same time. So, like, for example, the idea of Husk and Chamber, their whole entire conversation about the idea of Husk wondering, like, will Chamber wait for her until she gets back because she might be gone for a good while. Her mother is very sick. Now, let's not forget, with the side wave hitting right now for Chamber, he's no longer able to communicate like he used to with his telepathy. And so, unfortunately, he really can't say anything to Husk, and so he has to write it down. But it's also him kind of announcing, not pronouncing, but announcing his love for Husk. And for Husk, she loves the idea that him right now wants to wait for her, but also the possibility of him being madly in love with her as well. Now, when it comes to Sync, his whole storyline is really more of him handing money over to Weasel and Dorian to help pay for the car that got crushed in the last chapter when it came to Bianca's spacecraft crashing at the school to basically fight against Emma Frost. And so it's really Sync just trying to be a good person. And it's Jubilee kind of, well, just jumping the gun. Before actually trying to figure out what Singh is trying to do, she automatically believed that he was going to shoot somebody. And the two guys were the ones she thought he would shoot because in an earlier storyline, they had beaten him up badly to the point where he had to go to the hospital. But instead of fighting against them, he's actually helping them. Now, the plot line going on with Banshee and also his daughter is really more the two characters just bonding with one another again. Because let's not forget, for Banshee, he was not really around for Teresa when it came to her growing up. Now, for me personally, he's kind of innocent here. And the reason why, because well, he didn't know she was around. Like he had no idea he had a daughter. And technically she was being raised by Black Tom. But it's the two of them kind of come to term that they can kind of move on from the past. And really, honestly, we already saw this before, like the whole idea of her forgiving him and him kind of understanding that he was not a failure, but like he did fail somewhat as a father, but he's now trying his best to turn things around for the two characters relationship. But you do have to kind of say like, dude, I'm happy that you are my father because you gave me your great looks. But to go ahead and end the storyline on issue number 44, we do see that once you have Banshee and Chamber and Teresa come back over to the school, well, you didn't have them realize the biosphere is gone. Like it is completely gone, but so is Bianca, and so is, well, her crew as well. Now, they do find this photo that was suddenly taken right when the biosphere was, well, stolen. And they come to find out the biosphere is somewhere or possibly in a different point in time. But as we transition into Generation X issue number 45, we're now getting into the idea that Emma Frost is upset about something. And you have everyone realize there's something going on with her. But unfortunately for this storyline here, or this chapter here, that kind of does get put on the back burner until almost the very end of this chapter because now we had to switch over to Jubilee and also Skin. And we learned that for those two characters, they have been trying to get Chamber out of the bedroom, but also that this chapter does take place a few days after the ending of the last chapter. And so for Skin and also Jubilee, they have been trying their best to get him out, but like he's not leaving. And let's not forget, with the sideways still being around, that for Chamber, he's no longer truly able to communicate. So they have no idea what's truly going on with Chamber at the moment. But Homeboy is not leaving his room. And they're kind of wondering is because, well, Husk is no longer around for the time being. Now, when it comes to Emma Frost, we also see her right now in the training room just trying to, well, it seems like she's trying to release some stress at the moment or release some anger that has been built up inside of her. But for Banshee, kind of realized that there is a possibility that she needs somebody to talk to. So his goal right now is to be that person that she could possibly talk to. But now we have to switch over to Monet. Now, for Monet, I kind of realized that ever since we had discovered her true origin, she kind of been put on the back burner for the time being. But is also Monet trying to figure out, like, what exactly happened to the biosphere? But also, she's questioning Leech and Artie like there's a possibility they might know what happened to the biosphere. But it's also her being very upset about the idea of no one kind of wondering if she is okay. Because when the side wave hit the Earth, it also affected her powers as well. Now, she has many powers, so she only lost the ability of being a telepath. But again, she hates the idea no one had came to her to see how she's doing, the whole idea of losing her ability of a telepath. But the rest of this chapter is really more of us kind of seeing Emma Frost explaining like What's going on with her? Why is she so upset? And so when it comes to Banshee, he does try his best to reason with her, to understand her. And the thing is, for Emma Frost, she had heavily relied on her abilities when it came to her growing up in life, going through life. And so the idea of losing her ability kind of makes her feel like she's a nobody again, because she has no idea where to go with her life. Now, for Banshee being her right hand man, he does explain things to her like, yes, you had those powers, but those powers did not define you because you have been a villain, a hero. You have run a successful business. Like, you have been many different things without the idea of your powers. And so once you have Emma Frost kind of hear those words, that is when the side wave officially ends when it comes to Generation X, because now Emma Frost has regained her abilities, but she also tells Banshee, thank you for being there in her corner. But the book does end on the note with the idea of Gaia officially joining Generation X, but also Emma Frost kind of hinting of the idea of something new coming to the actual team. Now, this is the end for Larry Hama's run on Generation X. And then we do get a new writer come in and try his best to save this series until it was officially canceled in the early 2000s. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.